Okay. Tracy, do you have the agenda handy by chance?
Yep, I will go ahead and do roll call for you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Giroux,
Here.
Councilmember Nickel,
Here.
Councilmember Persek, I see her.
I said here, sorry.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Here.
And Mayor Boyles.
Sure.
Okay, so roll call is finished, and now it's on to item number 1, introduction. So I'm not sure who has the ball now.
Okay, Joe, is that you?
So Scott is logging in right now. Barbara's helping him out. If we can just give him maybe about 30 seconds, he'll be on.
Okay, who's got a joke that's appropriate? Elias, you got one? Oh, Scott, Nickel, you got one. Go.
What did the left eye say to the right eye?
Video. There you go.
I don't know about you, but something between us stinks.
That's pretty good. I like that. That's kid friendly.
It is kid friendly.
I promise never to be late again. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we've just been filling the time, getting a quick start on your performance review, Scott.
First item on my review is to fix
I kid.
to fix connectivity. I apologize.
I'm just kidding. Take it away, Scott. We're ready for it.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, welcome to the annual strategic plan review and update. We're looking at year 2 of the 3-year strategic plan. So here's the agenda. By the way, we did send this to the council and the clerk. It's available to the public. So we'll go through the presentation. Well, I'll just go through it. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. All right, so what's the purpose? We're going to give you an update on year 2 of the 3-year strategic plan. Initially, in early 2019, City Council, you approved a 3-year strategic plan with goals and priorities and objectives and so on. And that was to go through 3 fiscal years. Last year was the year 1920. We gave you an update on that. Now we're looking at year 20-21, and we're 6 months into it. It's a 9-month fiscal year because we're changing fiscal year calendars. So we're going to give you an update on that. We will then talk about organizational issues in 3 categories. We're going to talk. Whoa, I don't know what that was. So we're going to give you a brief overview of our finances from our Chief Financial Officer. Then our Development Services Director will give you an overview of some land use issues that we're dealing with right now. And then after that, I will talk about the challenges and successes of this year. We're setting the stage, and then we'll get into the 3rd year of the strategic plan, and we'll walk you through that and see if council, if you want to make any tweaks or changes to the 3rd year. We believe we can do this within an hour. We have allotted 2 hours for this purpose if we go the full length. All right, we can go to the next page. So now would be the time for public comments, if there are any. Okay, I guess from our city clerk, we don't have any, or do we?
I'm sorry, if anyone that is an attendee would like to speak, can you please raise your hand? I do not see anyone that wishes to speak.
I see a Morgan Roth on my screen with a handheld icon or hand up.
Okay.
Can you all hear me? Should I?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm not sure how much time I've got here. I'll keep it pretty brief. My name is Morgan Roth. As the mayor mentioned, I'm on Bird's Government Partnerships team here in Southern California. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment on your planning session today. We're very eager to work with El Segundo to increase regional interoperability and support transportation connectivity. We've been operational in El Segundo previously, but also cities throughout Southern California for the past 3 years. And we would love to work with you all to provide an additional mobility option for the city, which would help address a number of the priorities before you today. As the city considers its strategic plan moving forward, parking is a challenge, and there are other challenges in the city that micromobility could certainly address. Since 2018, we've worked with cities around the world to address existing first and last mile gaps in public transportation. And we see our presence has been a massive success in not only helping cities achieve these gaps, but increasingly shift use away from single car trips. With our presence, we've seen city after city utilize our data to inform their planning infrastructure decisions with the aim of increasing safety for all users of the road. We would love support to support El Segundo in providing greater access to transit and providing an additional mobility option for residents. We consistently see that 50% of all electric shared trips offset a car trip, and our data shows overwhelmingly that micromobility supports economic activity, with most trips ending at businesses. Connectivity and mobility is critical to helping businesses begin their path to recovery. I understand that El Segundo has adopted proposed rules and regulations from the South Bay COG in the past, and has agreed previously to an IOA with Bird. We would love to work with the city to get a program going again with the latest technology that we have in place to be able to help meet parking concerns and other concerns on the right-of-way that were previously experienced in the city. And good luck with the rest of your meeting today. I will follow up with City Council individually. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roth.
Mr. Mayor, if it's okay with you and the council, I'll have our Public Works Director, Elias Sassoon, follow up with Mr. Roth and continue the discussion and make him aware of opportunities that he might want to bid on or try to be a part of in the future.
Great.
Okay, so I don't know, City Clerk, I'm sorry, we're doing this virtually. So do we have any other speakers? Is that it?
I do not see anyone else with their hand raised.
Okay, so council.
And I do not have any written communication, so I think we're good.
All right, terrific. So here on the screen now is an overview of what we're going to cover today. So to reiterate, we do have a 3-year strategic plan covering 3 fiscal years. We're in the middle of year 2, and then next year we're getting starting July 1 through June 30th of 2022 will be year 3. As I mentioned before, we're going to give an update on the 2nd year, and then City Council, toward the end of this, you'll have an opportunity to comment on the 3rd year. And we're going to walk you through each goal to see if you want to make any changes or make some additions. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to turn it over now to Barbara Boss, our Deputy City Manager. She will briefly walk you through the year 2 update. And this will be a very summary presentation. Go ahead, Barbara.
Thank you, Scott, and good afternoon, Mayor and members of Council. So just to give you a quick recap, 2 slides here on where we are to date on the strategic plan. As you know, we've got 5 broad goals, 63 activities, and 10 council priorities listed in that strategic plan document. So of those 10 council priorities, all 10 of them are either completed or in progress. And you can reference the work plan that was sent out to see where we are in each of the items. And okay. So as I mentioned, we have 63 total activities in the strategic plan. 70% have been completed. That's 44 of the 63. 17 of the activities are underway and will continue in the next fiscal year. And then there are 2 that are still waiting to be addressed, and they will be addressed next year, and they may continue into the following year. Those 2 are the Veterans Recognition Program and the property tax increase item. And that's it for the update on year 2, and we'll get into more details later in the presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara. So next are organizational issues.
Scott, may I just interject to clarify what the Deputy City Manager was saying there? That's not to increase our property tax, it's to increase our share of remission from the property tax at the county level. I want that to make sure that the public watching understands we are not looking to increase residents' property taxes.
Thank you, and I realize I misspoke on that, so I appreciate that clarification.
Okay, and Barbara was summarizing a multi-page status update report, which is available to the public, and the council has a copy where it goes through each one and it provides an update. So that is available to the public. But even with the pandemic and all the financial challenges we've had over the last year, the organization did a good job delivering on making advancements, completing and making advancements, progress, if you will, on your strategic plan for year 2. And that is delineated in great detail. Okay, so before we get into the year 3, we want to talk about organizational issues to bring you and the community up to speed on some broader matters. And we have 3 categories. The first category involves a financial update. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Joe Lilio, our Chief Financial Officer. And before you get started, remember, Council, on your regular agenda, starting at 6 p.m., we will give you an in-depth overview of the current fiscal year's budget. So he's going to hit some highlights right now to help frame the discussion on the strategic plan. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor Boyles, Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel, and City Council members. If you can turn to the next slide, please. So as Mr. Mitnick mentioned, it's going to be a very high level for the strategic planning session right now. We'll get into more detail later tonight during the regular City Council meeting when I will be presenting the mid-year update. So the proposed 21-22 reserves are adhering to our 20% policy for the general fund. That could be about $16 million. Adhering to the economic uncertainty policy of funding it with $2 million. Workers' comp will be funded at a level about 70% confidence level, or $7.3 million. And our general liability fund will be funded at about 33% with just under $500,000. The trust balances. So the current trust balance for our pension trust is $4.9 million. And that's as of March 31st, 2021. And that is an annual return. This represents an annual return of 16%. That's great. Hopefully Calpers can meet that at the end of the year. Our OPEB trust, which is about 58% funded, has a balance of $32.3 million. That's as of April 15th. And in the OPEB trust, it's about a 19% annual return. And as of the current year, we are no longer making contributions into the OPEB trust. That is saving the city just under $550,000 a year. The interest earnings and the investment income is sufficient enough to get this trust funded at the 100% confidence level by about 2030, 2031. So this is the forecast that I present to City Council during every strategic planning session and budget study session. So we are projected to end fiscal year 2020, 2021 with a balanced budget. That's great news. Just about over $60.5 million. 2021-22, right now we're still in the development phases of that budget, and there is a budget study session coming up May 4th. There is a projected deficit right now, structural deficit of about $9 million. Staff is working on some solutions, which we'll be presenting to council on May 4th. And in the out years, you'll notice this does look a little bit different than prior year forecasts I've shown, or the last several forecasts I've shown. In here, I have put in the pension obligation bonds. So that has significantly reduced expenditures in the out year. So that is incorporated into this forecast. And the line, the vertical line that starts off in 2021 at about $18 million. And then you can see it dips down by $9 million in 2021-22. and then maintains a balance just above $4 million. So if we can address the 21-22 structural deficit of $9 million, that fund balance will remain at the 20% level in the out years.
Joe, do those revenues account for the lakes as well?
Yeah, a portion of it, yes, it does. So there's some of it that is being dedicated for specific sources. But yes, the portion that's going to the general fund, yes.
Thank you.
We can skip that one, Barbara. Okay, Calpers Pensions. So Calpers, their annual target is 7%, and their fiscal year goes from July 1st through June 30 each year. June 30 of 2020, Calpers had a portfolio return of 4.7%. Which is well below their target level of 7%. However, with the pandemic and the stock market downturn, that's still, I would think it's still decent return. That will result in an additional unfunded liability of $6.4 million, which will not be in our books until after August of 2021. So when they issue the new actual report in early August of 2021, that unfunded liability of $6.4 million will show up. So that is not projected in the pension obligation bond issuance that we've been talking about. To date, Calpers, they've been trending at about a 15% return for this coming June 30, 2021. So this return is as of March 31st. Hopefully they can maintain that through June 30. If they do, that would result in about a $23 million actuary gain to the city. So that would more than offset that $6.4 million unfunded liability. Plus there'd be some reserves left in there for any future losses from Calpers or actuary changes, such as if they're doing a study on longevity or any of the other actuary inputs. So some of the upcoming financial issues for 21-22, addressing the structural deficit of approximately $9 million for next year.
Hey, Joe, sorry, can we go back one question? Do you know roughly how much of Calpers' portfolio sits in fixed income?
Equities represent approximately 55%, 56%. Fixed income, so at least about 45%. I don't, Mayor. I know there's the rest is going to be between fixed income, and then there's some
real estate,
and then some private investments that they have as well.
They're heavily invested in bonds, though, right? If I remember correctly.
They do, and I believe it's in the 20% range, so between 20 and 26%, somewhere in there. But I can get you the exact number.
Thank you.
So the upcoming financial issues, fostering economic growth and business stabilization.
Joe?
Yes, sir.
I happen to have the document from the latest PERS summary from the recent pension committee meeting we had with our pension committee. The PERS, their current allocation, 53% equities, fixed income is 28%, real estate's 11%, private equity 6%.
Thank you.
I'll share this with council separately.
And I know that private equity, there's a lot of discussion going on right now on the Calpers board about increasing that between 10 and 12%. So some of the other issues continue to Calpers unfunded liability, which we've adopted. The city council has adopted a UAL policy that addresses that. Implementation of new technology, employee engagement program, labor negotiations with police and fire unions. So both those labor groups, their MOUs expire September 30th of 2021. Potential ballot initiatives for March 2022. Need for financial stability and long-term financial strategic plan.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we said that would be short and quick with a financial overview of the key issues. We delivered on that. Now we'd like to spend a few minutes with our Development Services Director, Sam Lee. he will walk you through just a sampling of some of the exciting land use projects that are underway right now. So Sam, we're going to hand it off to you. Did that work? Oh, there we go.
Can everyone see the screen?
No, not yet.
I wonder what happened.
Sam, it was on there a moment ago.
Yeah, let me try again. Let me get out. Let me stop share and let me try again. Share screen. This is the screen. Share. And then I play the presentation.
Sam, is it on a shared drive where I can pull it up and maybe help you with it?
You know what? Maybe I wonder why it's playing.
Someone's on their way over, Sam.
Sam, I think I have that presentation if it's what you sent me yesterday. With some, is it? No?
Well, while we're waiting for that, Council, I'll remind you, this is it is our last week of doing the virtual meetings. Starting on May 4th, we'll be in the council chamber, so we won't have odd moments like this going forward.
I got it on here.
There it is.
Well, that's the other one though. Can somebody stop sharing that one? So this is the, so I want to share the screen.
Go ahead.
And it's the screen and share. And I want to play this presentation.
Instead, go ahead. Escape from that.
Escape from where?
From this presentation.
Okay.
Because it's trying to present that, I think. So go ahead and do share again.
Share.
Or stop share.
Stop share.
Share screen. And then let's just do the PowerPoint presentation.
But then it's going to share that screen, isn't it?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, we can see it, Sam.
It's playing that screen.
Not playing that one. Okay.
I can see it. Looks good.
Go ahead and press share screen again. And then this one. Nothing.
We did have it 30 seconds ago, and then you did something and it went away.
Not sure why it's not showing that one. Sorry, let me see here.
Yeah, you may need to just use the screen that it's showing on Gerson. Can you just use the screen? We may not be able to expand it, but you'll be able to see content.
We'll take a look right now then. So let's see here. Go to the actual windows. Just to quickly do it, I think you might just have to go through.
Scott, can we maybe, oh, here it is. You got it. It's up again.
Just go from this.
That might be the only, just do
Yeah,
quick.
just use this format. This will work.
We might have to look into that later. Yeah, it's not gonna, I'm not sure why, but it's not gonna show there.
Is it gonna,
So
it's not gonna go to the next
yeah,
screen.
it's not going to go there. The only thing that's going to show us that one. So
folks, I think we should do an audible. Barbara, pull up the older version of this. Sam, just make the best of it.
Okay, I'll just go. I will have to, I think, play with two computers, I think. But anyway, good afternoon, Council. This land use report is also a high-level report. This is certainly not a comprehensive list of projects in El Segundo, but it highlights a handful of development projects that we've been moving forward in this calendar year. They're arranged in chronological order as to when they'll be heard by the Planning Commission and or Council. Let me see here. Oh, I have to click on this one, I guess. It won't even go like this one. This just none of this is working.
Let me try. Hold on.
Yeah. You want me to stop sharing, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Stop sharing, and then Barbara will pull up her earlier version.
All right. Here it is. Is it? Is that viewable for everyone?
It'll work.
Yep.
All right.
Go to the next screen, Barbara.
Sure.
Yeah. So the first development is at 650 Pacific Coast Highway. Next screen. This project, this project will be heard by the Planning Commission in a couple of days on Thursday, and if no issues arise at that meeting, it'll be heard by the council the following month. The main building fronts on Pacific Coast Highway, but the project also fronts on 3 other streets, Lairport, Mariposa, and Maple. Some of you recognize 650 PCH, actually, it's previous screen. Some of you recognize 650 PCH as it looks. It's the old Boeing building. Next screen.
Yes.
It'll be completely remodeled with the new glass facade and will certainly add city's image as people drive through the city on PCH. The 7-story, 120,000 square foot building. Next screen. What people won't see is the large parking lot at the back of the property, which is also being developed. It'll be replaced with the large building, as you can see. It's a 7-story, 77,000 square foot building with a parking structure. Next screen. This is a view from back of the building, as well as the view from the back building. This is a view of the outdoor plaza, which connects the 2 buildings. Next screen is the second development is a project you're all familiar with, but it's the next phase of the Standard Works project. In this phase, the developer is proposing to build an office campus with caretaker units on the roof level. Much of the existing brick building on the ground floor is being preserved. This project is scheduled to be heard by the council in August. This phase includes 2 primary buildings. The previous screen.
Sorry.
One is on Franklin. It's at 1320 Franklin. The overall building is about 67,000 square foot. It'll be about a 47,000 square foot addition to an existing 20,000 square foot building. The second building is on El Segundo, 1475 El Segundo. This is also about a 68,000 square foot building. It's also a 47,000 square foot addition to an existing 20,000 square foot building. This is a view of the corner of El Segundo and Kansas. Next screen. This is a view of the internal plaza of the building. Next development is the Catalyst project. Catalyst project has two main parts, the north side and the south side. This is the next screen. This is the current view of the northern side from Kansas Street. And it's also the same view of the proposed project with the same viewpoint. Previous screen. This is the current view of the northern site from Kansas Street. And next screen.
Next screen.
Yeah, this is the view from Grand and Kansas. And this is also the view from the south building with an internal plaza. Next screen, Barbara, thanks.
Sure.
This is the next project is the Pacific Coast Commons. This is the 6.3 acre site of the two hotels, Aloft and Fairfield. There are two main components. They'll be removing the restaurant ballroom building, and they'll be developing on the two surface parking lots. What's proposed is a 6-story mixed-use development with 263 housing units and 11,000 square foot of ground floor commercial space. They're also building 3 parking structures with almost 800 parking spaces. This is a view of the site at Mariposa and PCH. Next project is in downtown. It's at 201 Richmond at the corner of Franklin. You'll notice that it's really a parking lot. It has a small building in the back, and it's proposed to be built. Next screen. This is also the site of the original City Hall, which is no longer there, but the 650 square foot jailhouse building is still there and is being preserved. This project proposes to build about a 14,000 square foot office building with 4 residential units above. Next screen, and you'll see that the jailhouse building is being preserved at the back of the property. This is a view from Franklin and corner of Franklin and Richmond. The last development project is at 1950 Grand. Next thing. This is a view of the current site, which is a parking lot, and the same view of the proposed project. The project is a 5-story, 94,000 square foot office campus, along with the building. A new 258 parking spaces, a 4-level parking structure is being built. The project will be heard by the Planning Commission end of this year. The next map just shows several new businesses and restaurants that have been or will be added to the city in the near future. And the last one shows, this shows several offices and healthcare providers that have or will be moving to El Segundo soon. Everyone's heard of the Beyond Meat moving to 888 Douglas. In addition, L'Oreal will be joining them at the same site. House Laboratory, a cosmetic brand from Lady Gaga, has moved into Plaza El Segundo. Torrance Memorial is coming to Nash Exchange, and Belkin will be moving to 555 Aviation. So I am so sorry about the technology, but that's all I had, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, so there are no questions. We'll go on to the next section. Barbara's going to tee that up. So this will be challenges and successes. The City Council, while we're going to that, that's just a snapshot of things that are happening now or planned to happen. As Sam's last slide showed you, was all these companies, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this in a moment, all these different companies that have decided to move their headquarters here or expand on what they have. And they involve thousands of jobs, not just a few dozen or a couple hundred, but thousands of jobs, or well north of 2,000 or 3,000. What that shows you, though, is how the private sector is thinking past COVID, and they're thinking long term, and they're very optimistic and upbeat about our future. So we're in a transition phase. So the challenges, we'll talk a little about challenges and a little bit about successes. When we started this year, a year ago now, there was an incredible amount of uncertainty. Council will recall the challenging meetings we had dealing with the impact of the pandemic. We are surrounded by cities that ended up doing significant cuts layoffs, reductions, takeaways. Through the council's leadership, we were able to avoid that, and we were more surgical in how we dealt with a significant drop in revenues. Remember, our economy is tied to LAX. The airport, LAWA, is a love-hate relationship with the city of El Segundo in terms of the effects of the airport, but it does provide a lot of jobs. And our number one revenue source in the general fund is transient occupancy tax, the hotel bed tax. The 15 hotels rely heavily on that. So we had to deal with the economic stress of our revenues. We had service impacts with our community being impacted by the effects of the coronavirus. That was a real challenge. We had a year ago incredible uncertainty. We had no idea how we were going to end the year. That's how we started the fiscal year. Then we had the social justice protests and issues. And ironically, the verdict came out today from the situation in Minnesota. That's just one sample of some of the social justice issues. But we had uncertainty. We had protests here. We didn't know how it was going to affect El Segundo. And I'll talk about successes in a moment, but this city really stepped up to deal with that issue. I mentioned the financial consequences of both of these emergencies. We had state of emergency proclamations here locally. These are like once in a lifetime, once in a career type of experiences. We had it all in fiscal year 2021. Our city facilities and services, a variety of rec programs, library programs were completely shut down or near completely shut down. We didn't have 4th of July fireworks last year. And council will recall how we were on again, off again with certain services like the beaches, closing the beaches, opening the beaches. Lots of uncertainty about types of services we could provide. We got through it. We had to freeze a number of positions. Joe, I'm forgetting the number, 25 or 30 positions. We froze throughout the general fund to help balance the budget. By freezing positions, it impacted our service levels. We had to make a series of budget adjustments. We saw in the private sector, even though Sam showed you a lot of success, there were a number of businesses that had to scale back, shut down, et cetera. Council, you recall the repeated warn notices, the reduction in employee numbers that were coming to us, which is unusual in El Segundo, but the number of private sector companies that were laying human beings off. It impacted our small businesses, especially here in the downtown, in particular, restaurants and small businesses, especially again, the mom and pops, they were impacted severely due to the health orders and the reduction in their customer base. But we've worked with them to weather that storm. Topgolf, that's something we're celebrating today, but a year ago, Topgolf came to us and said, hey, we are pencils down. This project's put on hold indefinitely until we could figure out what's going to go on, or what's going to happen due to this pandemic. So we had, this fiscal year, we had many, many months of stress and uncertainty. That's a sampling of the challenges. So next is our successes. And I will tell you, council, and I'm trying not to leave the witness here, but when I look back and I went through all the agendas, notes from the meetings with you, and looking through our strategic plan, I'm proud of the men and women in the organization at all levels, how they stepped up and they were able to weather this storm. We managed the COVID-19 emergency in just an exemplary way. I was on a call recently, or an email exchange, I should say, with the president CEO of the Herald Papers, and she commented how El Segundo led the way in keeping its residents and businesses informed during the pandemic and our response to that through our incident management team. She shared with me, unlike any other city that they cover. So that's a compliment to the council's leadership and your staff, especially Chief Donovan and his team and the incident management team across many different departments. We excelled with that team, the constant notices, the communication with the community, the communication with our elderly residents, especially those at Park Vista just down the road. I believe it's a 96 senior housing development that the city had built, and we managed that. We kept those residents informed. We helped them deal with the COVID testing, vaccinations, and so on. Most cities don't do stuff like that. That's just an example. And then the actual vaccinations for not just city employees, school district employees, local government folks, but we extended the vaccinations to members of the community. And that's happening right now. So Chief Donovan, kudos to you for the dozens and dozens, not hundreds and hundreds of vaccinations you and your team have delivered to the community. Again, we made it through this pandemic with while we had impacts on service levels, we didn't have to lay off full-time positions. We certainly had part-time positions that we had to suspend, but no employee takeaways, no reductions. We weathered the storm. The support for our downtown and businesses throughout the community was very well done. Gundo to go, outdoor dining, road closures, permit and processing assistance, and so on. The list goes on. Council, you directed us, do what we can to help salvage and save the businesses, especially the smaller ones. Your employees stepped up, we did it. We balanced the budget. In response to the social justice situation, El Segundo led the way in the South Bay by establishing a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. No other city did this on their own. Typically, cities that have done this in the last decade, it's been in response to something, a judge, an order or something. But here in El Segundo, we embraced the issues. Council, you listened to the substance of the protests, and you formed a DEI committee. And we're going through the process. They're in the middle of studying the topics you asked them to do. They will submit an update report to you shortly. You should feel proud of that. When Sam was going through the private sector development, what he really was talking about is approximately $1 billion in construction activity in this fiscal year, approximately $1 billion. That's a lot for a city with 5.5 square miles. Space Force is an example of an announcement that just happened in the last week or so. With that has potential of adding many, many jobs. Beyond Meats, 1,000 jobs. L'Oreal Cosmetics, 400 jobs. Topgolf, 400 jobs. Belkin International, 320. There's a long list. All this was announced in the last just couple months. The Raytheon property redevelopment, that's moving forward. There's some exciting possibilities associated with that. That will come in the near future. On the affordable housing front, City Council, you led by example. You said you wanted to see progress and demonstrate movement on our RENA numbers. And you did approve affordable housing funding through the DR Horton development, and you selected an affordable housing services provider. More on that in the next year or two. In the downtown area, on the agenda tonight is, at your direction, it's in the strategic plan to do something with the downtown. And part of that involves updating your 21-year-old downtown specific plan. Well, on your docket tonight is to hire a firm to move forward on that process. You also directed us to request qualifications in RFQ from developers to look at repurposing the Civic Center property. That is moving forward. We've narrowed it down to a few firms, and staff will be coming to City Council in the next couple of months on that one, as directed and in your strategic plan. The downtown, we also did a series of other improvements, whether it was redoing the 60 plus, whatever the number is, 55 or 60 flower poles that were rusting out. We redid those, painted them, and there's beautiful flowers now on all of them. Landscaping enhancements, the bell that rings every hour to create that sense of place in the downtown, and the power washing of sidewalks. Instead of once or twice a year, we're doing it on a much more frequent basis. We celebrated some capital projects despite the pandemic. Acacia Park, the remodel that just opened. The list goes on. I can keep going. We also put forward the legislative platform that's in place. It's being implemented. We have a new HR director. A new risk manager starts in a week or two. The EDAC, that's being converted from a city committee to a private nonprofit economic development corporation. That's on the docket today as well to move forward with that. And City Council, you were true to your commitment to the residents with respect to the airport, and we provided an extensive comment letter on the ATMP draft EIR. You're doing this to help reduce the negative impacts of the airport on the community in terms of noise, air pollution, and that type of thing. So that comprehensive 100+ comment letter is now in front of law. They need to respond to that and to tell our community how they're going to deal with all that. Council, you also showed financial leadership on the water and wastewater rates. You have 5 years of rate adjustments to ensure that those enterprise funds are self-sustaining. That took a long time to get there. You're moving forward on the pension obligation bonds issue to help ensure financial stability and to lower the cost of pensions on the taxpayers. Highly positive media coverage, whether it's the LA Business Journal, the LA Times, Daily Breeze, the Herald, etc. You have very good press coverage. The LA Business Journal is a real big advocate for El Segundo, and that's a reflection of your policies and the development activity taking place in the community. But I would like to comment as I wrap up talking about success is just how stable and focused the city council is. And in today's day and age, you read all these sensational stories about other communities, but you don't read that about El Segundo because the council is stable, united, and focused. We have a really good executive team that continues to evolve. And the greatest asset you have, city council, in my humble opinion, are the 300 plus full-time employees here who are dedicated to delivering the best possible services, even in times of great deal of stress. And we're on track to create a high performance organization. So that's a summary of challenges and successes. Now we're going to shift gears and we're going to go into the strategic plan for year 3. And what I'll do, City Council, and you have the strategic plan, we'll look at these documents. I'll read off what they are. And if you want to fine tune them or deliberate or talk about them, this would be the time to do that. Remember, the real significant changes would take place as you go into the next strategic plan, the next 3 years, which we start next year. But what we're doing today is you're doing a check-in to see if you want to make any tweaks at the beginning of year 3. So when you set out over 2 years ago to do this long-term or the multi-year strategic plan, you did look at the city's mission statement, and this was established, and it reads, as on the screen, provide a great place to live, work, and visit. Last year, you did ask us to take a look at this. Barbara, I think you can comment on this, but we're not recommending any changes right now. That would come with next year, but if you wanted to fine tune this, we're receptive to that. I hope I explained that correctly. Are there any comments on your mission statement?
Scott, I think it was, if I recall correctly, it was the vision statement more than the mission.
Okay, well, good.
Vision is what do we want to be when we grow up, so to speak? What's our big, hairy, audacious goal? And
gotcha.
Right now, it was basically a hub for innovation. I think fell flat.
Yeah, there it is. So just as a reminder, the mission statement is what we try to put on our your council agenda. We put it on our documents, and those are words we live by, and it reminds us that we work for the taxpayers. So the vision statement is like a customer service philosophy in a way. So this is what we have now. Council, are you interested in changing it at this time, or do you want to wait till next year?
Can I make a clarification, Scott? Typically, organizations, the mission is what you do, and the vision is what you want to become.
Okay.
So the mission is what we do every day, which is provide a great place for people to live, work, and visit. The vision is what we want to be, where we're headed towards. And I think the reason it fell flat last year was that we're already a hub for innovation where big ideas take off. So I don't know how the rest of the council feels. I don't want to deliberate it for long. I did think though that we were going to wordsmith that within the past 9 months or so.
So Drew, this is Carol. I agree with you. I think you should always be looking, your mission statement should be constant, or at least up for a longer period of time, but your vision statement should be changing as your community changes, or as you change as a community. One of the things that I've been playing around with in my mind is, who are we who is El Segundo? And, we have these things, a hub for innovation, where big ideas take off. We also, we also have our residential, we have Smoky Hollow. And I really kind of wanted to throw out an idea. One of the things that we've been struggling with is the entrance to El Segundo. And there, we put a group together to come up with a concept, and it's kind of really hasn't really produced anything. And, we have multiple entrances to El Segundo, and each of those entrances are a different facet of who El Segundo is. But at the end of the day, the one thing we are a community. We're a community of residents, we're a community of businesses, we're a community. So I really wanted to kind of maybe take some time to talk about, our vision statement is we are the community of communities. Like, we are everything to any, every type of, if you're here as a business, we have a community of businesses will help you as a business. If you're a resident, we're a community of residents. So just that's something I'd want to toss out and have a conversation about.
Thanks, Carol.
Mhm.
Do we want to, last year we said, Carol and everybody else, we said, all right, it's not entirely there yet, but it's in the right direction. Staff go back and figure out how to do a wordsmithing exercise. I don't know why we never did that, but should we maybe take this and just ask staff to go back and revisit this as something to address?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because I mean, we keep saying this, we're innovation ideas. I mean, we keep saying we're big ideas. I know it's a great theme, but at some point you have to also look past that. I mean, we have, you know, a lot of things happening in our town, you know, in in fiscal 22, you know, you have the new Space Force coming to El Segundo. You have, you know, a lot of beauty companies coming into town. You know, we're evolving, and we just need to make sure that our vision statement really encapsulates all of that and not just one, you know, one segment of the community.
Is anyone on council opposed to directing staff to come back with a way to refine these two things?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Nickel here. Sorry, Mr. Pimentel.
No, go for it.
I'm not opposed to it at all. I think at this time, then I think us as a council should discuss, well, who is the statement directed towards? Is it directed towards our residents, or is it directed towards our businesses, or is it directed outward towards the rest of the world? You know, that knows El Segundo for, you know, many different reasons. So I think that's more, otherwise we're kind of sending staff down the road to wordsmith something or figure out, like, read our minds. And I don't think that would be fair for us to do to them.
Thanks, Scott. Mayor Pro Tem, you have a thought?
Yeah, I'm along those same lines. That if this is something that is a global facing piece of what's the vision, you know, I think it was resonant and an important statement last year. And I think that we're still in that process, and we are courting innovators with big ideas at every turn. And I think that it's even though we may have heard it enough that we've heard it till we're blue in the face, that doesn't mean that everyone else has yet. And if it's an externally facing vision statement that helps tell people around the world what our vision is, you know, maybe it's too concise and maybe it could stand some wordsmithing, but I think it is a resonant idea, and since it's kind of the right idea about what we do, because there are a lot of big ideas.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. Lance, did you want to comment?
No, nothing really to add. I'm on board with what you're with the direction we're going.
Okay, the only thing, Chris, I'd say to Scott's point is that it doesn't touch on the resident side. It's hard because we're really a tale of two cities. You got this huge business community. So we are constantly innovating. We are that place. Doesn't really talk about the residential side. So Chris, are you okay? I think you're the one I'm not quite sure. Are you okay with directing staff to, because I think marketing firms, that's what they do. They help figure these things out for us
Yeah, totally. That's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Okay. Scott, Mr. Mitnick, does that give you enough to work with?
Yes, sir.
Are you sure?
May I ask a clarifying question, Mayor?
Yes.
So when we look at our unique value proposition or our brand pillars, we don't just, I mean, you know, depending on the audience, but we don't just look at business, right? So we look at the quaint downtown, the beautiful residential communities, the excellent schools. So it's a whole community look. Is that where you're going with the vision statement or the mission statement to encapsulate the entire community rather than looking at it from a business perspective?
I think we're saying maybe ask some experts, possibly the same firm that you work with on that unique value proposition, to help us figure that out. But it should probably, either we have two, in my estimation, either we have two separate visions, which is kind of strange, or we have one that's more encompassing of who we are or what we want to be as a city, where we're headed.
Okay, so the firm was me and Christina.
Oh, nice work.
Mr. Mayor, would it be wrong for there to be a second sentence? I mean, there's 9 words there. Our entire vision for the city of El Segundo is encompassed in 9 words. You know, because that, like, I love this statement for our business side of town. You know, but something about, you know, a hub for innovation where big ideas take off and where real people live and create community. You know, something like one line that just kind of holds true to what we try to do west of the boulevard.
Yeah.
I just think adding, because if you added 9 more words and a total of 18 words for a vision, I don't think that's overkill.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, I think we just, I know we only have like, what do we have now? Another hour or so. We've already been at that, we're at that hour mark already. I would suggest that we ask Barbara and Christine to work on it a little bit. I'm just looking at, like, if you look at Disney's vision is to make people happy, Instagram's is to capture and share the world's moments. And it's just a couple, but yeah, I like your idea, Scott. I think rather than belabor it, let's see, Barbara, maybe you can do something with it after the fact, you and Christine, and poll us individually or something. Does that work for you, Barbara?
I'm sorry, I couldn't find the view. Yes, absolutely. We'll do that.
Okay, great.
And we do have a marketing agency that we're working with on other things, so we can bring them in as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Bidnick, back to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good discussion. And then the next component of your strategic plan after we go through the mission statement, vision statement, is the city values. And this is what you put forward back in 2019. And also then those values define how we serve the community and manage the city. And we practice, there's 6 bullet points there: accountability, productivity, ethics, stewardship, challenging ourselves, and continuous improvement and reflection. Any comments on city values before we jump to culture? Hearing none, we'll go to culture. Is that okay, council?
Yeah, you know, one thing, Scott, in light of what's transpired in the last year, there's really nothing on there about being tolerant and open-minded as a city.
In our values, so we celebrate.
Yeah, I mean, there's ethics, which to me is more about doing the right thing and the way you conduct business. But I mean about just being tolerant and open-minded.
So you like to see us?
I don't know. I would defer to my colleagues, but just given what's transpired in the last year, values should be a constant. It's not something that really changes. So I guess I would ask the council if we feel like one of the things we value is being tolerant and open-minded, and do we reflect that in our actions?
City Council, you did add last year to strategic plan goal 1, you did add embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion. So you put that in one of your one of your 5 goals.
That might be enough. I'm just posing the question.
Sure.
I'm with you, Mr. Mayor, though. A city value could be embracing diversity, right? Embracing.
Can you zoom out? What are the first 3 again?
Accountability, productivity, ethics, stewardship, challenges.
Oh, there we go.
Inclusivity. Accountability, productive, ethics, inclusivity.
Yeah, that works too. Okay, so we heard from Carol and Scott. Chris or Lance, any thoughts?
No objection. If we want to add something, I mean, I think it's a implied piece, but if we want to make explicit, that no objection.
Okay, thanks, Lance.
No objection to inclusivity.
Okay, everyone okay with inclusivity?
Or
go ahead, Lance. You're gonna say something.
no, inclusivity or inclusion, however we want to word it, but I think it should be based on that.
Okay.
And then the other thing, challenging ourselves, that's just a kind of is there a better word for that? And I really kind of one of the things we might want to think about is proactive approach. One of the things I know I've always talked about is trying to make sure that we're constantly looking forward and taking a proactive approach to address potential situations. So making changes one of the things that I know, and Chief Whalen was always talking about too, is constantly changing so that we're constantly evolving and taking a proactive approach to how we manage the city.
I think that's in one of the, isn't that one in the slides, Barbara or Scott, the next one? I feel like I remember seeing proactive action or something like that. Or am I thinking of another document? There it is, proactive
Oh,
action.
proactive action, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
How would, sorry, how would the rest of you feel about something in there in regards to trying to, you know, always reference our past and where we've been and how we became where we are? You know, something that, you know, I've noticed while being on council is many times, you know, staff comes to work in El Segundo, but, you know, they don't get the opportunity to talk to their neighbor who's lived here for 50 years to know where town has come from and what it used to be like. And, you know, how Sierra Street used to just be like a knoll that people would ride horses on, right? So I think maybe somewhere in our city values, we need to state that we are grounded in our history and in our past. You know, I mean, I've always said that El Segundo has this like blue collar mentality, even though the, you know, average home price is $1.5 million. You know,
yeah,
it's that blue collar grit that I think it really creates the identity of the city. You know, and I just know that there is this perception of a disconnect between people who are newer to the city and people that have been here for a long time. And I think part of that disconnect is this like thought of like, well, the city's great because, you know, we made it great for decades upon decades. And so, you know, I don't know.
yeah. I like that train of thought. I'm just trying to think of a good word.
Yeah, but that's why staff, you know, Barbara takes it and they come up with the little word that encapsulates Scott Nichols' 30-second rant.
Okay, so you're talking about like respecting our heritage more or less, is I think what you're saying,
Yeah.
but not quite that. Okay. Lance or Chris?
Or learning, how about learning from our heritage? You know, learning, because you always want to think, as you write this, you always want to write it in a manner that you're constantly open for opportunity and growth. So it's like growth through learning from our heritage, or grow, you know what I mean? Like something where it's.
Okay, how about if Lance and Chris aren't opposed, we ask staff to come up with something for that one too. Lance, you're muted.
That cries out for someone with a creative sensibility. So I will. If staff wants to go deep into the English language to craft that, I'm certainly open to it.
I gotta be honest, I'm struggling with it only because I just don't see where's the benefit here on that. I don't think that our city has ever been accused of not understanding its past. I don't think that's ever once been questioned. I know in the 20 plus years I've been here, it's never been questioned. So I'm trying to figure out why are we putting in words and what's the reason behind it? How is that going to change the way we strategically plan our goals by putting that word in? Only because I know that this is something that we already are. We pretty much champion the fact that we have a rich history already. So that's why I'm just confused on what the need is on that.
Scott, you want to clarify? Nicole?
Yeah, I've always had this thought that how can you know where you're going if you have no idea where you've been? You know, and so much of our strategic plan, so much of our values are all about, you know, productivity and forward thinking and challenging ourselves. And, you know, our vision is a place where big ideas take off and, you know, everything is forward moving. And, you know, many times we'll sit up here and we'll talk about it and I'm all for it, right? It's progress. We have to progress into the world, but we cannot forget where we came from, you know, and we have an aging population here in El Segundo. Like we've talked, we've done dot voting on it, making us like an age friendly city. And we have an aging population here in town that, you know, sometimes walks around town or hears us speak and think like, this is not the town I knew. This is not the town that I helped build. This is not the town I coached Little League in. And so, you know, I think it's important for our staff to understand, you know, our vision and where we see things. It's like, yes, we need to move forward, but we cannot forget where we came from. You know, people say they love El Segundo because of its small town feel. Well, if you don't take that into your thought process when you go into planning and moving forward in the future, it's like, well, then how can we keep that small town feel? So that's my thought process behind it. I understand what you're saying, Lance, but many times it's, you know, keep the train on the tracks, but then as things start to fall off, it's the train just starts veering and going in its own direction.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Scott. It's almost like challenging ourselves while honoring our past, because I do hear the same thing. I mean,
Yeah, that's a good
if I
one.
look at my peer group when I first started raising kids here 26 years ago, they would think they have a different opinion probably of what El Segundo has become and was than my peers now raising kids all over again. It's just I think it's a different set of expectations.
And then instead of challenging ourselves, how about grow through community engagement? Because we don't talk about how we reach out to our communities. Like we include our communities in many of our decision-making decisions. Like we have a lot of community members involved in our committees. We have the EDACT, you know, the new board that's forming. We actually we reach out to our community as we continue to grow.
Is that in the next slide though? Is it? I can't remember.
Goal 1 does make reference to engagement.
No, but I mean on the next slide, that one right there. Not really.
No, the goal 1 covers engagement. So on city values, we heard add a bullet point on inclusivity. How about respect for the past or honoring the past? Would that cover another bullet?
I think so. I mean, it's a starting point. Maybe you guys could come back to us with your recommendations at a future date.
Okay.
Is everyone okay with that? So we don't get stuck on that slide for another 20 minutes.
Yeah.
We'll come back with
Fine here.
Okay, honor the past. All right, we'll move on. We'll come back with these revisions when we come with the budget coming up. All right, city culture. So in your strategic plan document, it reads city culture. El Segundo strives to create a working culture of 5 bullet points: innovation, support and recognition, leadership by example, proactive action, and problem solving, getting to yes. You comfortable with this? Would you like to revise it?
So maybe you just add the word community here, just the word community, because it encompasses everything.
Engage in the community.
Yeah.
I agree with that though. That seems to make sense.
Okay.
Can we put problem solving getting to yes at the top?
Yeah.
You want that on top?
I kid kind of, but I think it's still a challenge we're working through. I know all the department heads are working on that diligently.
Amen. Okay, moving on. Your 5 goals. And your strategic plan is divided in 5 sections based on these goals. And where you see the yellow or oranges lettering, that's what you had us add to this last year. So goal 1 reads enhance customer service engagement and communications. Then we added embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Great.
And in each goal, we have a separate set of activities. So that's the underlying goal. Are you comfortable with this language for goal 1?
For the sake of time, I'd ask everybody, are there any change? You guys all know the goals. We're probably good with the goals, right? Those should be a constant pretty much. We added the diversity one last year. Does anyone want to make any changes to the 5 goals that we have, strategic goals?
Okay, we'll go quickly. Goal 2, goal 3, okay. Goal 4. And each goal covers segments of the overall city organization. So all the department heads fall underneath them. The goal 5. Okay, and then you have last year you had 9 top priorities. You added a 10th one. And so they are, the first one is the age-friendly city designation. Teen Center was item 2. Item 3 was fighting a good fight with the LA expansion issue. Item 4, or priority 4, was guidelines for use of potential revenue from golf course lease. And interestingly enough, that's on your agenda coming up. The Teen Center actually item, that's on your agenda coming up too, with the rec park assessment study. We're recommending hiring a consultant to do that. Item 5 is to further infrastructure and downtown improvements for Main Street. We have a piece of that on the agenda as well. Rounding out your top 10, Item 6 is to attract senior living facilities in El Segundo. Item 7 is to identify areas within the community appropriate for housing. We made a lot of progress on this. Item 8, looking at repurposing City Hall. 9, develop a unique value proposition for attracting new businesses. Item 10, you added last year in response to the pandemic, ensure that the city is positioned for post-COVID-19 recovery. Any changes to your priorities for year 3?
Yeah, this is Lance.
Go ahead, Lance.
Sorry, good. Okay. I don't know whether it's a matter of addressing this now. This is something that we're going to be talking about later, but we need to address this El Segundo Weisburn Aquatic Center situation. That pool is running at a $350,000 deficit right now. We need to figure out how to hit a reset button and figure out how to make that, if not profitable, come really, really close to breaking even, because the direction we're going right now is just not acceptable. Yes, we're coming out of a pandemic. Got it. I understand all of that. However, even if we hit all the bells and whistles and the pandemic hadn't happened, I still don't think we were going to be anywhere near where we needed to be as opposed to what we thought it was going to be. That is an aquatic center. It's not a local pool. We need to start running it that way. And I would ask that we take a look at this, figure out how to, what we're doing wrong, how to fix what we're doing wrong, and get that back, because that's going to be a big piece of the budget, a negative line item, if we don't start addressing it pretty soon.
So I agree with you. And so maybe we add something about optimizing our parks and recs in complete, like looking at it, because we have the plunge, we have, I know that for the library park, we're trying to activate that. We're putting in the new artwork through there, but I agree that, the pool should at least come close to breaking even. And I think like you said, we're running it like a local pool, not an aquatic center.
I would just ask, is that a matter of addressing, is that one of the city priorities in this regard, or is that something that administratively we can correct? I think that's something that we can, between staff and the council in 2 meetings, we should be able to have a solution for that, as opposed to a year-long effort on some of these. So not that, I would completely agree that Weisburn El Segundo Aquatic Center has been a creeping issue that hasn't really been creeping. We've seen it coming. We just have to turn to on it. There's a spot for it. It may already live as a subsidiary task to one of these. Maybe that's just part of Goal 5, right? Under fiscal sustainability, because that's not fiscally sustainable.
Right.
Yeah, it might be that. And I also know we're going to be discussing it later, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I did want to throw it in there because we need to get out in front of these things about being proactive on what these issues are going to be. I know we've always had an issue with kind of infrastructure kind of getting kicked down the road and things like that. So I just wanted to make sure that we were all on top of that at the beginning. And if it's not to be put in here, that's fine, as long as we address it later.
So how about we say, because the golf course one will be coming off, so why don't we say optimizing our parks and recs facilities? Optimizing for use and profitability. Our parks and recs facilities.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I have a suggestion, right on line with what Councilmember Perstek just mentioned. Barbara, can you go back a page? Your top priority number 4, we've pretty much delivered on that. And you're going to act on a component of that tonight. If council is willing, based on what I've just heard, we could revise 4. We could take that out and we could insert something along the line of develop a, we can wordsmith this, but develop a game plan to make the aquatic center viable, or make both pools viable, something like that. That could be put as a top priority for the next year, because you're going to hear the report tonight talking about the shortfall. In a few months, you're going to be working on hearing design opportunities for the plunge. We have no how should I say this? We don't have the financial resources to either build it or to maintain that facility or both of these pool facilities. So you want to direct us over the next year, perhaps to come back as early as October or November with a game plan to how to make both pools viable.
Okay, so
yeah,
I agree
would
with you.
welcome that on the top 10.
I would agree with you, Scott, but you know, I'm going to be very disappointed if the city comes back and says we don't have the resources to do the plunge, because that was always the goal. And it was always being said that we would do it. So like for us to go back to our community now and say, oh, we don't have the resources to fix a plunge, I think we'll get our heads chopped off. So please, we have to be very cognizant that plunge was always the jewel and we were supposed to rebuff it at some point. And we have to make sure that that's a priority for our community.
I have no problem replacing item 4 with something in regards to Parks and Recs efficiency. Can you go to the next slide, please? And so this item number 7, identify areas within the community that are appropriate for housing. I was thinking we should alter that in the sense of, you know, how can we prepare ourselves to defend the assault on the R1 zone? You know, I know it's part of our, you know,
How do we preserve the R1 zone?
How do we preserve it? You know, because it is constantly being attacked from Sacramento. And, you know, there's lots of discussion as to, you know, what could happen, you know, in the future. At one point there was a discussion about potentially, you know, studying the potential of housing east of the boulevard, you know, but the fear there is as soon as you study it, that's the first step to actually putting it in. But I think that we need to be prepared on how we can truly try to defend our residential zone from density. You know, Sacramento wants density. I mean, there's bills in Sacramento that say that every single family home, like Lance, Carl Jacobson could sell his house and somebody could build four townhouses next to you. And I don't think you'd be too happy about that, right?
Well, not yet. It's still a bill, but
still a bill, but it's this type of thing that if you want to talk about what's coming down the line it's an absolute assault on the R1 zone. It's discussed at realtor boards and there's more people for it than I think there are against it, sadly to say, but I think we need to be prepared for how can we defend it? How can we defend it or how can we push it off? If they want density, where can we put that density? How can we keep that density out of our residential zone?
Do you want to, well, I think Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, if I could just, I think we crafted that item 7 with that in mind to a degree where we wanted to have agency on this and say we're identifying the areas of the community that are appropriate for housing, and we sort of take it upon ourselves and derogated to staff that the ability to say areas that are inappropriate for different kinds of housing. So the reason we do have 2 concurrent studies, one for the RENA number and one for our housing element to make decisions on, so that we can delineate what's appropriate and what's not. So rather than necessarily make it a negative, I think that we have in there that word appropriate is appropriate within the city government to make those decisions. So I mean, I would wholeheartedly agree with you. I would also say that my reading of 7 is a lot more generous to us maybe than everyone else's.
So I 110% agree. The reason why I'm trying to turn it the other way is because many times, you know, lots of people live under a rock. And then when they decide to stick their head out of the rock, they're like, why is our city council trying to find density and put more housing in our town? And it's like, we are not trying to add density to our town. We are trying to identify the proper areas to put it because it's being force fed to us, right? So if when we're working on projects or we're like set to approve certain projects, it's like we're approving those so that they don't touch our R1 zone. Like if our priority is to defend our residential zone, then they understand that the reasons we're doing what we're doing and is in defense of our R1 zone, right? And I think that is lost in all of it. I think that many people just believe that we just want progress and we just want development, you know, and we just want density, you know, and I know that is not the case.
Well, can I ask a question of Mona and Tracy? Is it possible to put all the council members up at the top? Because I'm having to scroll through like 4 different screens while we're in this mode to read everyone's expression and whether or not they want to speak. I don't know if there's a way to do that. If not, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. In the meantime, Scott, so you're saying maybe you would just put, even because this could be interpreted exactly as it's written without reading the subtext, you're saying identify areas within the community that are appropriate for housing, protecting our single family neighborhoods or something like that is what you're suggesting?
Yeah, because when you read this a la carte, it makes it sound like we're looking for places to add houses. Like we want to add housing. And that's not, when you actually listen to our conversations are dominated by how do we keep density out of our single family residence zone.
Yeah, and I can tell you that you said a lot of people are in favor of it. I can tell you that the entire South Bay City Council of Government Board of Directors is adamantly opposed to all these housing mandates because it takes away local control. And I know Chris Pimentel, Mayor Pro Tem, has been working on with the contract cities that same objective, which is to regain local control of where we put the housing. So is anyone opposed to Councilman Nichols' suggestion of just refining it a bit further with another clause there at the end of it?
Mr. Henley's got his hand up, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, please.
Yes, Council, just to, for your purposes and for the public purposes, there are two issues that are going on. Is one, the city has received its regional housing needs allocation from Sacramento, which is 400 and some odd units that by October, a plan has to be submitted to Sacramento, the Housing Community Development arm of the state, that has to show where the city are going to put those 400 and some odd units of different affordability numbers. And separate and apart from that is the legislation that is going on, like the accessory dwelling units you've seen for the last 5 years, and this new bill, the 4 units per lot in the R1 zone. And so there are two different assaults coming out of Sacramento, and Sacramento is not necessarily given any credit for, as they dice up the R1 zones, they're not giving credits necessarily towards this RENA allocation. So I just want to make that clear so that even when the city puts those 400 and some odd units someplace else, Sacramento is continuing its assault on the R1 area. So they're putting units everywhere. I just want to make that clear. It's not an either or for them, it's both. And that's just the way they're doing it. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, Mr. Hensley. Is anyone opposed to Scott's suggestion? Councilor Giroux, you're off mute. You want to address it?
What is it exactly that we want to be saying? I guess, because when it says, I know you talked about defending R1 housing, I get it, but this is a pretty broad priority where it says within the community. Are you saying maybe identify areas within the city that are appropriate for housing? Will that satisfy it? Because one of our goals is we do need to find this. So what is it that we want to say? Do we want to say that find areas within the community that are within the city that are appropriate for housing outside of the R1?
In order to preserve the R1 zone.
I'm fine with something like that, but in the end, yeah, okay. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have a suggestion.
Shoot.
How about something like this, based on what I've heard here? Number 7 to be revised to read something like this: preserve integrity of R1 zoning while identifying potential areas for new housing to comply with RENA requirements.
Beautiful. Anyone opposed? Going once, going twice. I think you got it.
Okay.
Thank you. Scott, when do we, if there are any other additions, something we think is relevant that we might want to consider as a city, would now be the time, or do we still have time?
We're going to go right to that.
Okay.
So here we are. We've given you what your plan has, where we're at for year 2. Now year 3, this is the time if you want to make any tweaks or changes. And that includes the more detailed activities. So if there are subject matters that you feel are not in this plan for year 3, now's the time to introduce it.
Mr. Mayor, can I put out something that I think fits under goal 5?
Please.
Because we will have a general election in 2022, and we can put things on the ballot. I would argue that because things go to the voters then, we should start preparing anything we want for that this year. And to that end, I think we have a fundamental interest for economic development and fiscal sustainability in any revisions and updating we need to do to the administrative code so that it better reflects the 21st century and the pivot of the space and aerospace and technology industry that we're becoming. So there's elements of the administrative code, I think, and that will have to go to the voters if we make changes there. I think updating and modernizing, our business tax code. That doesn't mean raising business taxes. That just means our tax code is situated to a post-World War II manufacturing base and is not reflective of our modern industry. And if we don't make updates to that now, we will be chasing it later. So I would argue those two elements. And thirdly, I think that we have talked about airport parking as sort of something that is an underutilized piece where there's no TOT on airport parking. We forego revenue that the entire rest of the universe captures based on that. And that I believe would have to go to the voters as well. So if those three things I think fit under championing economic development and fiscal sustainability for the future, 2 items of modernization and 1 item of just sort of playing catch up with effectively expanding TOT to cover airport parking lots.
Thank you. Okay, I support all 3. Other council comments? Scott, Nicole, thumbs up. Lance, thumbs up. Carol, cool. That was easy. Good work.
City manager, just a question on that. Or those are things that have been sort of percolating in the background for a long time. We're sort of bandying them about. If that's an unreasonable workload where something has to get pushed off, is there something on there that we need to squish to make room for that? Because I think that also is important as well in terms of staff time.
You're muted, Scott.
Sorry, I was trying to prevent myself from speaking when I'm not supposed to. We can adjust the under activities to incorporate the 3 items you said, and if we need to remove some of the other minor ones to deal with the impact on workload, we'll do that. We'll massage that and come back later with that.
Scott, the one that stands out that I think I even recommended last year was the veterans program. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's also probably a lot of work for something that isn't necessarily urgent in nature. But I don't know, as the other vet, I don't know how you feel about that, Chris, but.
That may be something that a nonprofit or a city civic organization would take on for us and sort of develop something and bring to us as a plan and program they want to implement. They may be better suited for that and staff for that as well.
Yeah, there's actually two groups or 2 parties in the community right now that are focused on the veterans. There's Crookshank and then Tobias, Elizabeth Tobias. They both pull the community together to help the veterans. The one thing that I had wanted to talk about on our strategic planning is, one thing we have not put in there is timelines of when our expectation of things being completed. So I just want to make sure as we go through this that we have clear understanding of the timelines, because things tend to just sit like the plunge for many years. And I just want to make sure that we have clear expectations going into this.
Thank you. I've got one idea I want to propose to you all too. And if now's the time, unless there's something else, Scott, Chris, Lance, are you okay with that? I'm going to share a screen. And the reason, just to lead into this, you already mentioned it, Chris, about economic development and fiscal sustainability. We had a lot of discussions when things were really tough. And I remember Lance talking about this. Everyone actually on council is, how are we going to position ourselves when we come out of this thing? Because we're going to be scrapping against every other city who's dealing with, I don't know if you've seen the numbers yet for vacancy rates for commercial property, but they're pretty staggering. And El Segundo so far has fared really well. We have to be competitive. So we asked Barbara and her team to come up with a unique value proposition. I know we're going to get that in any day now. You guys are working on the final for that. That's a start, identifying how we're going to compete. How do we differentiate against Culver City, Inglewood, Santa Monica, and everybody else that we're competing against? One of the ideas that I kicked around with Supervisor Han's office, as well as Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, is the idea of an incubator. And so if you think about where Starburst Accelerator came from, Starburst Accelerator was basically an incubator that was more or less hatched out of the EDAC. So I just want to share something real quick with you guys. Can you guys see my screen? Okay. You guys have seen this. This is the deck I use with Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong and Supervisor Han's staff. This is really talking about the success that Starburst Accelerator has had in El Segundo. And as you guys know, it's focused on space, defense, and aerospace. This is really what Starburst, if you go to their website, you'll see this. It's incredible what they've been able to do. 215 startups accelerated, 783 corporate interactions. And if you look at my favorite part, Barbara, I know you're going to love this too, because you got the logo up. If you look at who their partners are in the far bottom right, who's on there? LEDC, City of El Segundo, and ANSYS. I don't even know who they are. But this was a partnership that was formed, and it has very little financial contribution from the City of El Segundo. So when I talked to Dr. Patrick and Supervisor Han's staff, this is what it could become without being specific to aerospace. Instead, harnessing the momentum we have in biomed, food production, technology, esports, etc. The problem is, having personal experience in this, startups are incredibly difficult. There's a major disconnect between government and entrepreneurs. They just don't talk. And in fact, entrepreneurs avoid government like the plague, typically. So there's an opportunity because of that problem to put people in touch and to help government help entrepreneurs. There's also a scarcity of dollars, intellectual capital, and advisors. This is right off Starburst Accelerator's platform. What they do, they have an accelerator. They provide venture funding now. They have their own portfolio of investments.